This video is called Why Not to Be a Common Coward. Let's start with the idea that cartoons and the Bible have lessons. Cartoons quite often have moral lessons that are applicable in life. And if somebody pretends that is not the case, you should not listen to them. They are a bad person. Are these morals perfectly explained? I go as far as to say the simple answer is no. Not in the cartoons, not in the Bible. Why not to be a common coward, and why it is important to strive to be a hero is something that people, even in America, historically have learned at a young age to some degree. And they're supposed to build on that. That is what it means to grow up. So when we look at the moral, or rather the unavoidable truth of the Bible, it is total sacrifice for God. Total sacrifice of the flesh for God. It is not sacrificing God's spirit for family or self, but total sacrifice of the flesh for God. Jesus, the Son of God, was the main sacrifice in the Bible. Abraham was willing right away to sacrifice Isaac when it was made clear to him that if you want to maintain your relationship with God and the Spirit of God, you need to sacrifice your son. That's what God requires. God decided he learned the lesson and didn't have him kill his son. However, if God hadn't, it would still be fair play. The true lesson in the Old Testament was a willingness. The New Testament says, now that's not enough. You have to sacrifice your family's flesh and your own for God. If you are not willing to do this, you are not a Christian. If you are not willing to do this, you're not really a Jew. You haven't learned the moral foundation and the lessons of the moral foundation in the Old Testament. This mind state, this spiritual state is the only way to be good. Think about it. It is the only way to be good. If you're not willing to sacrifice your family for good, then that can be leveraged against you to make you evil or a sniveling worm servant of evil. Certainly this has everything to do with the divine order. Whose explanation do you listen to and why? And I'll go over that more in other videos as I explore other ideas in this 5-part series. The second point that must be considered as we move on to destroy Western philosophy in its current state is, what age was a child made a man and why? What age is a young man considered a man and why? Conceptions of manhood. Young man, 18, 16, 14, 12, etc. At what point should a child be willing to die for principles? That's part of being a man. I use the example of two families. One with food that is theirs, given to them by God, given to them by their righteousness and their deeds. There's another family that is starving to death. Should they steal from that family to feed their child? Or should they accept the death of their children and themselves? But first and foremost, their children. You'll see why I use this example later. Just to keep their child alive. If they choose to let their child starve because it is wrong to steal and it offends God, etc., okay, then they have sacrificed that child for the principles of good. So at what point should a child be considered a man and be treated like a man? If he's a child and you're a man, then you must be willing to sacrifice that child for the same principles that you are willing to die for yourself, or you're not a man. We'll get into this soon, why that is, in point 5. Point 3, military service, school, and time. Life is short. Time and service. Who, what, when, where, how, and why. The draft. Even if you don't send your child to the military, they can be drafted. They can redraft the laws to draft them, and so on. Angels fly. Time flies. Point number 4, abortion. When is a baby a baby? So you'll sacrifice your child because it is inconvenient in regards to you being assimilated and finding your life the Western way, in Western culture, with Western values, ideals, etc. It's interesting what people will sacrifice their children for and what they won't. You see how it's becoming very clear-cut that one should sacrifice their child for God the moment it is clear that must be done. Or they are evil. They couldn't possibly be good. The absence of good is evil. Number 5, the meaning of love. People say, I'm not going to sacrifice my child because I love them so much. But love comes from God. God is love. If you separate yourself from God or your child from God or both, you don't love them. Consider what it means to be fixated on something. Obsessed. What is affection and how does it differ from love? What is attachment? Certainly there are many off-balance, sick weirdos that would agree with you about what love is. Serial killers, pedophiles, obsessed men and women, stalkers, etc. They would say, yes, you're right. You love that child. And that is why we have people gang stalking and group stalking people today. They are sick. They are obsessed with life. They are in defiance of God. This has everything to do with idealism versus sense. These aren't ideals by themselves. This is sense. It is what it is. You can't compare the love of a hero to the love of a worm that serves this world. That is insane. Do not let people who are insane define love for you, or you are insane as well, and you deserve to share in their fate. It is not enough to see this. You must behave accordingly. It is not enough to know the ledge. You must follow God carefully with leopard-like steps, if you will. So let's look at the difference between the A is connecting the mind and the body, right? The triangle, mind, body, soul connection. The mind and the body are connected in the A, right? The soul is what connects them, right? And is connected high to show you that you have to be high up there, right? The A isn't the balance between the two. Ultimately, it is the point on the top, the point. This is just the point of growth of the individual, not of the group. They have to grow in the divine order or they are lost. The V is pointing down. There is no connection between the mind and the body. They're off balance. That's why martial artists are the ones that determine the divine order. True martial artists. African, not Western or Eastern. By labeling themselves Western or Eastern, they have taken a worldly race perspective and not the grouping where we all come from, not the source. The source of martial arts power is African. As soon as you define it as something else, you have separated yourself in a very dishonorable, disgraceful, pitiful, despicable, and pathetic manner from the source. Feminism is the dominant philosophy on the left. It is the philosophy that drives the LGBT community. It is the donkey, so to speak. Americanism, conservatism as the worldly elephant. The worldly donkey versus the worldly elephant. Feminists are really arguing, when you listen carefully to what they are saying, in their mainstream form, in a very obvious manner, and in other forms in a more subtle manner perhaps, that submission to your boss is okay, but not to your husband. Your boss might be male or female, but one way or another, if you're moving toward a gender-neutral society, you will have women working for men. They'll be using their pussy power to keep their job and for the cause, right? So they're saying submission to your boss, submission to this world, and not a man who has the true masculine spirit of God. That is their argument. Survival over love. This is also the argument of the conservative, of the American. Surviving in this world, conforming to the cultures of this world, the different groups that make up American society. This argument, when challenged as such, leads to, well, I am going to do what they say because I can't beat them kind of argument, right? That's what it leads to. It leads to children's survival over love. That goes back to the first 5 points I made. The 5 points why they are wrong, why all the opposition is wrong, and why I'm wrong. And there's many, many more powerful points I've made in my videos that prove my point. Children's survival over love is incorrect. You're saying your fixation, your obsession, your racist selfishness, really. They are your race. They are your image, right? You're obsessed with your own image. You're a narcissist. You should put your hand over your mouth and be silent. If you can't even love your child by yourself, which you cannot, mind you, it can only be done through the divine order, you are lost. You are not the most focused. You are not the most insightful, perceptive. You are not the top martial artist. You are not me. You don't know love. Only I know love. And only through submission and the repetition of submission to God through the top martial artist can you know love. So you are choosing your fixation, obsession, affection, and sick attachment, sick worldly attachment over love and God. You are valuing the feces of your child and not the spirit, so to speak. Satanic liberation is the justification and the root cause of their despicable direction. Feminism, Americanism, libertarianism, conservatism, all the isms you have that are accepted. Satanic liberation, labor, the labor, to lay the board, set the principles of evil. Look it up. Labor, a shun, the alpha shun the true direction of man, which is only found in the alpha, right, with the A, pointing up one way or another. Okay, pointed up, focused, versus unfocused sheep being okay, right? You're an unfocused lemming going off a cliff. The opposite of that is being focused. And who displays it more than the martial arts through sparring? If you are more focused than I am, regardless of height, it should be a walk in the park, or it should at least be doable for you to beat me in sparring. If you insist on a system, by default, you're a bitch. Especially if it's a non-Horus system, you're a bitch. Especially if it's an Eastern or Western system, a non-African system. You've separated yourself from the source, and you expect me to do it your way? And some of you expected people to limit it to demonstration and form demonstration? It's a demon. And anyone who strays from the demonic direction, you shun. Demonstration. It's also the difference between a female being nice. Oh, hi. Oh, we're having fun. Oh, she's a dumb bitch. Versus the grace only found in submission to God. And God is only found where? In the alpha. Who's supposed to determine the direction? The beta? The coward? The first thing we all learn as children, those from my generation at least, is why not to be a coward? Why to be a hero? Why to strive to be a hero?